Thank you for being you. Locking in. Okay, so I have some channeled messages for the collective. Let me start by saying you may not want to hear these channeled messages. There is a very big chance that many of you will not be ready to, wanting to, willing to, open to hearing these messages, these particular channeled messages. So yeah, I guess Spirit's got me working extra hard today, even though many ignorant, unaware, unconscious people definitely have no idea what that actually means. I think they have a right to judge. I mean, there's just like, okay, so what's coming through today? Thanks so much. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks. 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 Thank you. Thanks. 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 Thanks, mate. Thanks. Isn't it funny when like people speed up to try and like not allow you to get into a lane? It's like, what is the psychology behind that? It's very bizarre. It's almost like there's just idiots out there trying to test other people if they're as stupid as they are. Anyways, so the channeled messages are coming through about privilege and about well, okay, so I love the spiritual community, right? I am a healer. I'm absolutely a healer. Before that, I spent a lot of time in the arts industry, in the arts community. And a lot of the artists that I exhibited, a lot of the artists that I curated, a lot of the artists that I gave space to in my galleries were marginalized people. So people who in some way, if you don't know what the word marginalized means, then please research it. Please look into what that term actually means. If you don't know what white privilege means, particularly if you're a white person, please research that. Please look into that, particularly if you're interested in engaging with my channel in any kind of way. And it's very hard because I love spirituality. Like, I love receiving, channeling. I love the work and the gifts that I have. I'm not in any way ungrateful for the gifts that I have. I'm not ungrateful for the people in the spiritual community who I know are very good people, who I know are doing good things and have very good intentions, right? But there seems to be this like strangely, bizarrely, overwhelmingly out of touch way that people in the spiritual community seem to be talking. And I'm just at a point where I'm just like, I don't really understand why it is so hard for people to acknowledge, admit, and understand that there is oppression in this world, that there is discrimination, that there is bigotry. And we want to talk about evils. You know, we talk about dark energies, we talk about evils. And keeping in mind, I know some people already are completely on the same page as me and they're just using code words because they want their videos to get shared, or they want to stay relevant in algorithms that cut out and block out this kind of conversation, right? This kind of talk. Luckily, I don't have to worry about that because of who I am. So you can look at my numbers already, right? On this allegory at YouTube. So what have I got to lose, right? What have I got to waste other than to lose some subscribers that I have here at Codes of Harmony? If you were a white baby, if you were a white child, you, from the second you open your eyes, from the second you are born into this world, you have a different chance in this world, because currently where the collective sit, currently the collective as we are, currently Earth as it exists in this 3D reality is a very fucking racist place, is an extremely, extremely racist place. And so it's difficult as a Black woman, as an Indigenous person, and a multi-marginalized person in many other ways beyond just my skin color, beyond just the race that I am. It's very difficult to be continuously coming to a place in a spiritual community where I'm faced with people completely disregarding the reality of this earth at the moment, the reality of what's happening. And the reality that different people get treated differently on this planet at this time. You might have some conversations going on or some content being created around the idea of spiritual psychosis. There's also chat GPT psychosis. There is and I want to talk about it in a little bit more of an advanced way, where I just want to draw to attention, what is it doing spiritually, energetically, and in the literal physical reality between people as healers? What is it actually doing if you're completely disregarding the lived reality of Black, brown, and Indigenous people, or any kind of marginalized person, such as disabled people, such as members of the LGBTQIA+ community? And then we also talk about in spirituality a lot about death and birth, right? Death and life, good and evil, dark and light. I might have the strongest manifestation skills in the entire world, but that cannot change and does not change the fact that bigots who do not know me automatically treat me differently the second they see me, the second they come into contact with me, the second they view my work. And yes, I have a very, very close connection with spirit. I'm very blessed and gifted that way. The irony, though, is when you are a certain person, you get treated differently for having these gifts. That also seems to be something we're allowed to discuss, right? That seems to be something we're not allowed to acknowledge, or we don't acknowledge enough within the spiritual community. I almost titled this video being Black in the spiritual community. And then I was like, nah, we all know, I know, my higher self knows that I'm definitely going to have to mention and talk about being Black. Excuse me. And just purging on behalf of the whole collective. Excuse. I'm going to have to talk about being Black and this vast, startling, widening gorge that is being created between people, that is happening in the mind, that is happening in the soul, that is happening in the spirit, that is really actually not that different from many times throughout history, her story, them story. And the reason I say that, if nobody ever worked out, is because I'm just making a point about how gendered the world is, and making a point of how misogynist the world is, even the way that we talk, the predominant language that is spoken. And I say that because even like even in non-English, people who come from English-speaking countries will even go to a non-English-speaking country and expect people to speak English. And because of tourism and the global economy, blah, 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 that is what's happened more and more, creating the delusional illusion that America is somehow better and more powerful than other places, other peoples, other countries. I've spoken a little bit about what it's like to be a brown person on a Black woman, a Indigenous woman in a space like YouTube, where specifically making videos that have quote unquote spiritual content is going to be part of the algorithm that fits me into what's predominantly African American content creators. Yeah, because that's the largest of Indigenous brown, of brown and Black people. That is the largest representation, like as opposed to Caucasian, white, Western people creating spiritual content. Can everyone take a deep breath in, please? I will join you in that, and we're breathing out. And just calling protection to this space, because this is a very important channeling. This is an important message, regardless of how many fucking views it's going to end up getting. I'm getting to a point where I am being heartbroken by seeing and realizing and having these horrible, horrible moments of complete conflict when I'm listening to somebody give divine guidance, divine spiritual messages, and then I can feel it come up in their field. I can feel it happen and shift in their physical body, in their light body as well. I can feel where there are these like black spots, is how it's kind of coming out. Like there was like a lens and you were trying to look through a lens at something, or a piece of glass. There's like these void spaces where that are just coming through as denial, of complete denial of the lived reality, and not just the lived reality, but the dying reality. Because when you are a person, a Black person, an Indigenous person, your life expectancy is shorter. And the reason your life expectancy is shorter than white people, Caucasian people, is because of privilege. And because of the impacting health conditions that Black, brown, and Indigenous people live with and have at a much, much higher rate due to privilege, oppression, discrimination. How hard is it for the white spiritualists that I follow to acknowledge the fact that they can get work easier than Black people, that they can get jobs easier than Black people, that they're not going to get shot by a fucking police officer who sees them and identifies them as somebody else, that they're not going to get locked up and spend and it's like I can feel all of the gods, I can feel the old gods and the ethereal beings, as well as the energies connected to like Lemuria, like Atlantis. They are all holding their breath, waiting for humanity to get this. For the giant black elephant in the room to just be acknowledged. I understand quantum. I very much understand quantum. I understand quantum in a way that I just absolutely know that these words would never convey, especially through this channel, through this cord, through this digital medium that I'm explaining this to you. I understand quantum in lots of ways. I am very quantum. I understand manifestation. I understand energy. All of those things are very true and very real. But there is more than one truth. And the other truth that sits alongside that is the stark, horrendous reality of the way some people are treated in this world. And not just treated, but the way that the opportunities that we have, the safety that we have. And when I mention death, I'm saying that I'm gently trying to bring it to the spiritual community. Yeah, let me just focus on the spiritual community for a minute, right? The spiritual community who I want very much to thrive within, who I know, and many of you know, I have so much to offer. And the gods and spirit and my ancestors, as well as your ancestors, regardless of your color, are all waiting, holding their breath, praying and sending huge messages to us, to humanity, to Earth, saying, please get this, finally get this, finally just admit it, so that we can evolve and so that Mother Earth can be saved. Because even the way that Mother Earth suffers is filtered geographically through racism and colonization. Then we have rich white men talking about wanting to colonize other planets. So what I was saying before about the allegory, I can feel lots of you, lots of questions, very sporadic energy. If you are triggered by these messages, please just ask yourself, are you being triggered for good? Are you being triggered for the benefit of yourself and the collective? There are thousands and thousands of videos on YouTube. And when I make a video and I'm offering it, I'm putting it into this pool. I'm putting it into this circuit, right? This giant circuit board of channeled messages that is being shared, that is being offered, that is being circulated. And I have ethics and morals that sometimes mean that my lived experience and my want to make the world not like this anymore, like I was an activist. I am an activist, but for a long time I was an artist activist and curator. I ran small art spaces, small art initiatives that had big butterfly effects. I intentionally curated, intentionally worked with artists who I knew didn't have as much chance. And those artists have then gone on to make changes and waves and ripple effects throughout the creative community and beyond. I always knew I was magic, but not quite this magic. I spent half of my childhood living and being around alternative communities and hippies and the peace movement that happened in so-called Australia. And in many ways, I'm still part of that and have returned in many ways to that. Well, I'm attempting to. So now I find myself in a situation where I am very spiritually gifted, but I'm seeing these big red flags about the spiritual community that I guess what I'm saying is I'm very disappointed to realize that, and to know, which is what I've tried to discuss in every job I've ever had, everyone I've ever worked with, is this imbalance that's going on between people. It's become somehow more hidden within the spiritual community because we have all consciously awoken so much more, because so many more people have come online spiritually. So many more people have awoken to their spiritual gifts. And in some ways, there is so much more potential, the idea of the internet making it so that people can say and get their opinions across. Unfortunately, now the tech companies and the algorithms and the way that all of these apps the spiritual community have given to, they are now all just as oppressive. They are just as fucked up. They are propelling forward the same favoritism, the same oppression, and the same denial. And they love when they get a brown person saying, all you got to do is manifest it and the whole world will be, they love when they get a brown person saying that stuff. So that'll be shared more. And then we have just legions and legions of Caucasian white people that have white privilege. And most of them are able-bodied as well, which means they have able-bodied privilege. If you don't know what that means, please look into it. If you don't know what able-bodied privilege means, look into it. Talking about that you can manifest that this reality, using this quantum physics terminology to say that you can imagine a reality and then suddenly the reality becomes. And it's like, that is like so far from the reality that so many buildings live in, including like Black, brown and Indigenous children that are working as slaves in lots of countries around the world. Still to this day, because if it's like 5 cents or whatever the fuck, or you're working for where you're living, there's so much interference going on. Oh my God. Acknowledge the black elephant and black elephant in the room. And the giant fucking white elephant and the giant pink elephant. Because if we don't get this, then Spirit's not going to let us go on. Mother Earth is not going to let us go on. We're going to continue allowing things like what is taking place in Palestine to happen while we're sitting over in a Western country, in our houses going, oh, just manifest it. Oh, just imagine a world as it, imagine you've got this, and then everything. It's just absolutely like, Like, I could make a video that just tells you everything that you want to hear. I could make a video that just completely denies these realities, but I would be denying my own reality, the reality of my ancestors, the reality of the children in my family that are going to grow up in a world that I hope is not as fucking bigoted as the one that I've grown up in. And if you're not having some kind of mental, emotional, spiritual, or psychological reaction to what is happening in the world, then you actually need to check yourself. Collectively, we all need to be assessing what is actually taking place and being actually honest about what is what the fuck is going on, which is still colonization. The Amazon wouldn't get to burn if the whole collective of Earth stood up for it. Palestinian children would not be getting murdered and blinded. Palestinian doctors being kidnapped. It like literally shown to us, pushed in our faces, to finally see that was the final test to see what the entire collective of Earth would do in response. And we have protests that have been agreed to by the city and the police. We have these, and then we go back to, so many of you are in denial and cannot admit or acknowledge that even if you are poorer than a person of color, your life is easier. I'm so sorry to have to be the one to burst your beautiful, shiny bubble. If you are a white person, your life is easier. Yes, I know, brother. I hear you. Everyone goes through things. Yes, everyone goes through things. Everyone has a hard time. Everyone has complex things happening in their family dynamics, in their personal relationships, in their romantic dynamics. I understand that. But all of that is easier if you're white. Do you understand? Is that really that hard to acknowledge and admit? Spiritual community, artist community, all communities, is it really that fucking hard to acknowledge? Because if we don't acknowledge it, we're done. If we don't acknowledge it, like spirit's gonna go, okay, let's see next millennia if a life form will be formed that knows how to respect and honor and keep balance. You may have noticed in lots of the spiritual community conversations, maybe the tarot readings you've been watching, the image of the snake eating its own tail has come up. This has actually been coming up in pop culture a lot more, been coming up in the collective psyche a lot more over the last 5 to 10 years. What is it about that snake eating its own tail, the Ouroboros? There's a few different ways to say that, I've heard. And here I could talk about capitalism. I could talk about people chasing money. I could talk about people chasing likes and clout in spaces like this. But the collective eating itself alive is actually because we are, if you want to use the metaphor that we're working with here in the spiritual community, because individuals are worried about imagining a perfect life for themselves and chasing a perfect life for themselves while denying the reality of privilege, of oppression, and colonization that is absolutely intertwined, intermingled with the destruction, the devastating destruction of this beautiful planet that we are so blessed, utterly blessed, completely heaven sent opportunity for us to be living here on this planet. If you have a white baby, your white baby has a better chance at life than a black baby. If you have a white baby, that baby is going to be treated differently than the way that the black baby born on the same day, even at the same hour, the same minute. And until the spiritual community collectively acknowledges that, admits that to themselves, and if you are a tarot reader and you're listening to me right now and you're choking on this or you're struggling, then I advise you to take some time off. I advise you to go sit down. I advise you to have a spiritual bath. I advise you to sit back and really, really, really meditate on what I am saying to you, because you are breaking my heart. You are breaking my heart. And it's very challenging for somebody who has lived in a world where I have been treated differently because I was a black baby and a black child, a little tiny black girl, and a black teenager in school. Can you imagine if I started telling stories of that? Imagine if I open up that chapter about how confronting all of this power, this magic, all of this confidence was to white teachers through my schooling experience, the discrimination that I experienced through my schooling experience. And this still goes on. And I see brown creators, I see black followers, and they know, like, we know what what the larger audience, as well as apps like YouTube and all the other apps, all the other online platforms, we know what you want us to say. We're aware. I'm aware that you don't want me to be here now talking about oppression and discrimination. You'd much prefer for me to be giving enchanting, angelic messages that make you feel good. And you know what? I love doing that. I absolutely love doing that. And yes, we are all one. Yes, we are all one. We all are valuable. Every life form, every human being, every baby, every child that is born is absolutely of equal value, importance, divinity, an equal blessing in this world. But they don't get treated as such. And then they have an entire lifetime. And if the spiritual community wants to help people heal from their trauma, then you'll need to start thinking about what I'm saying and understand that you do not understand what it is like. If you're a healer who is a white person, you don't know what it's like to be a black person. You do not know what it is like to live with the oppression, discrimination, the being a targeted individual in the way that a black person does. If that black person is then, for example, disabled, which many black people, black, brown, and indigenous people are, they have another layer of discrimination. They have another layer of oppression. If that person is then also, for example, a member of the rainbow community, the LGBTQIA+ community, that's another layer of oppression and discrimination that they have to live with, that they have to meditate through, that they have to work through, that they have to date through, heaven forbid, that they have to navigate friendships through, that they have to apply for funding with, that they have to go to job interviews with, which some of which is apparently now with robots. Isn't that charming? And if the spiritual community, all spiritual healers, all channels, all guides, all gurus, all content creators that are genuinely trying to offer healing and spiritual guidance, if you do not get this, then get the fuck out of the job. Because we don't have time. Like, we just actually don't have, like, Spirit's talking so loudly to me and through me in this moment of like my human self is like, why can't y'all get it? Why can't y'all get it? And then the spirit, the deeper, darker truth is that most of you do get it. All of you on some level within your soul absolutely know what privilege is. Absolutely know that you are luckier if you were born in the skin of a white person. You know that, but you just don't want to admit it. You don't want to admit it because the illusion will be torn apart. Because the delusion of white supremacy, of colonization, I almost went to say economics then, the delusion of it will be absolutely disintegrated, will fall apart. And so who are going to be the first community to be able to really properly do this? And obviously not the activist community, which I could talk for hours about in a totally different way. But the activist community as a collective, as a community, have acknowledged this major thing, this major fucking elephant in the room. Like the jig is up, the dance is done, the cat is out of the bag. This truth is so obvious, and that is why we were and are still seeing images of literal dead Palestinian children under rubble, to see how we would react, to see what the Western world would do. The literal slavery that is still taking place in Africa, that is happening in Africa so that we can have mobile phones. How can we continue denying these things? And I'm not saying like, oh, but I posted it on my Facebook, I shared it on my Facebook, so I'm educating people. We've gone past the point of education. We all know. Bless your white baby. Okay, so if you can't tell, I'm out in public, obviously, doing this channeling, and the channeling comes through when it comes through. I would really love if this message is heard and then responded to correctly, appropriately, with integrity and heart and honesty. When the pandemic happened, and is still happening, mind you, it caused a mass awakening. Now what? It also culled a lot of people. It took a lot of people from this planet. All right, you've walked past my car 2 times. One more time and you're done. Stare bears. Bless the stare bears. Okay, this is part 1, if you couldn't tell. 38:38. Exactly on the tick over clock when I said that. If you can't tell. 3838 might mean something for you. Number 3 might be important. Number 8 might be important. 33 might be important. 88 might be important. And I spent most of my art career trying to educate and express trying to teach this very thing, trying to show this very thing. And as an activist and an artivist, which is a artist who uses their art as activism, or does activism via their art, I spent so many years showing it perfectly, showing it with artwork and curation and projects that showed it perfectly. I used to go to many, many protests, physical protests. And like, you got to ask yourself, what is it actually doing now? What is it doing if you have the numbers that we're having showing up to these protests against, for example, what's taking place in Palestine? And I reiterate that these protests are always already approved to take place by the cities and the communities they take place in. Obviously not all, because then there's actions that take place. I think I'm actually feeling quite gaslit by a number and ignored, and not me as a person, but my actual lived experience being dismissed by a lot of these healers. Who make up a community that I am part of and that I want to continue being part of. And there are days that I'm even annoyed that I'm like, all right, Spirit, you chose me to be the one to deliver this message. When people get so triggered by me speaking these truths that they like shut down or become demonic or like betray their own ethics, like, but I really am a channel, and like the truth that I'm speaking, like for many years, my artwork was channeling, and I didn't know that for a long time. And I was actually creating, activations with my artworks, that I was doing energy work. I was doing grid work. I always thought and spoke about it like decolonizing, helping people decolonize their minds. Now I'm faced with trying to help people decolonize their souls. And that is a much fucking harder task. Okay, I'll be back real soon. So much love from Code to Harmony.